Do you ever wake up at 3 in the morning, and it's so quiet it almost feels loud? The house is still, the hallway is dark, and there you are, wide awake, staring into the same thoughts you worked so hard not to think about during the day. You might even whisper to yourself, "Why is this happening to me now?" And for a moment, it can feel like your body has betrayed you, or your mind is slipping into something you can't control. But what if I told you this isn't a character flaw, and it's not just aging in the dismissive way people say it? For many adults over 60, waking up around 3 a.m. is a pattern, and patterns have reasons. By the end of this video, you'll understand what those early morning wake-ups can actually mean for your body and your brain, the most common hidden triggers behind them, and the gentle, practical steps that help you drift back toward real rest, without fear, without shame, and without feeling like you have to fight your own system. And as we go, I want you to keep one comforting thought close. Waking up is not always a problem. Sometimes it's information. Let's start with the first piece of the puzzle, because it's happening inside you, even when you're doing everything right. As we get older, many of us produce less melatonin at night, the hormone that helps hold sleep in place. Think about Lorraine, 71. Lorraine falls asleep just fine. She has her tea, reads a little, turns out the light, and she's gone. But lately, she's been waking up at 2:45 or 3:10 a.m. with a strange kind of alertness, not panic, not pain, just a wide-open mind. Sometimes she even feels like it must be morning already. Here's what Lorraine didn't realize. Melatonin isn't only about falling asleep, it also supports staying asleep. And many studies show that melatonin secretion often declines with age, which can make sleep lighter and more fragile in the second half of the night. So by the time the early morning hours arrive, when melatonin is naturally lower even in younger people, an older brain may lose that chemical glue that kept sleep steady. And then the environment matters more than it used to. A tiny glow from a digital clock, a street lamp slipping through the curtain, a phone screen lighting up for 1 second with a notification. Light can suppress melatonin, and an aging brain can become more sensitive to those cues. So the wake-up doesn't always mean something is wrong. Sometimes it means your night biology needs more protection than it used to. If this sounds like you, the goal isn't to pressure yourself to sleep harder. The goal is to make sleep easier to keep. A darker room, a consistent wind-down, fewer bright screens late at night. And if you're considering melatonin supplements, that's a conversation to have with your clinician, especially if you take other medications, because natural doesn't always mean simple. But melatonin is only one layer, because there's another age-related shift that can place you face-to-face with 3 a.m., even if your health is excellent. Your internal clock may be moving earlier, even if your life hasn't. This is often tied to what sleep specialists call an advanced sleep-wake phase, feeling sleepy earlier in the evening and waking earlier than you want. It's common in older adults. Let me paint it through a real-life example. Meet Dennis, 68, retired. Dennis doesn't think of himself as someone who goes to bed early, but he's been nodding off in his chair at 8:30. He wakes himself up, brushes his teeth, gets into bed at 9:15, and then he's shocked when his eyes open at 3 a.m. as if his body is announcing, "All right, we're done." In many cases, Dennis's sleep isn't broken. It's completed, just earlier than his preferred schedule. If your body shifts toward an earlier bedtime, it often shifts toward an earlier wake time too. That can make 3 a.m. feel like the middle of the night emotionally, while your brain quietly experiences it as late morning biologically. And this can be intensified after retirement, after kids move out, after the house becomes quieter, because we lose external time anchors. Less evening activity, fewer social cues, less bright light at the right times of day, and the internal clock drifts. If this resonates with you, I'd genuinely like to hear it. Have you noticed yourself getting sleepy earlier than you used to, without meaning to? Or do you still feel tired at 3 a.m., but your brain refuses to cooperate? Share your experience in the comments, because your pattern helps others feel less alone. Now, even if your clock is shifting earlier, there's a third reason 3 a.m. becomes a hot spot for waking up, and it's one many people blame on the bladder. Without realizing, the bladder is sometimes only the messenger. Nighttime urination, nocturia, becomes more common with age, and it can disrupt sleep repeatedly. Think about Samuel, 74. Samuel wakes up at 3 a.m. to use the bathroom, and he's convinced that the bathroom trip is the whole story. But here's the tricky part. Sometimes the urge to urinate wakes you, and sometimes something else wakes you. Then once you're awake, you notice your bladder. That distinction matters. Nocturia can be influenced by fluid timing, caffeine, alcohol, certain medications like diuretics, blood sugar issues, prostate enlargement in men, overactive bladder, and even sleep disorders. One surprising connection is sleep-disordered breathing. When breathing is disrupted, the body can produce hormones that increase urine production at night, which means the bladder gets blamed for what started in the airway. So yes, it can help to be thoughtful about evening fluids. But I want you to be careful with extreme rules, like never drink water after dinner. Dehydration can cause cramps, headaches, dizziness, constipation, and it can actually worsen sleep. A wiser approach is more specific. Shift most fluids earlier in the day, watch late caffeine, and if you're on a diuretic, ask your prescriber whether timing adjustments are appropriate. If nocturia is new, worsening, or paired with pain, burning, blood in urine, swelling in legs, or shortness of breath, don't tough it out in silence. Get evaluated. Because sometimes 3 a.m. isn't your sleep problem. It's your health early warning system, politely clearing its throat. And that leads to the next quiet disruptor, one that can pull you out of sleep without fully waking your mind with anxiety. Physical discomfort, not dramatic pain, just enough discomfort that your brain decides, we're not safe staying asleep like this. Picture Anita, 77. Anita doesn't think she has insomnia. She thinks she has old bones. She falls asleep on her side, but by 3 a.m., her hip aches. Her shoulder burns. Sometimes there's a little reflux rising up her throat. Sometimes her mouth is dry. Sometimes her leg cramps. Here's what's happening under the surface. As we age, sleep architecture changes. Deep sleep tends to decrease, and sleep becomes lighter and more easily interrupted. When sleep is lighter, smaller discomforts are louder. A stiff joint that you'd sleep through at 40 can become a wake-up trigger at 70. Acid reflux can be worse at night when lying down, especially if dinner is heavy, late, or spicy. Some medications also affect sleep through side effects like dry mouth, vivid dreams, temperature changes, or nighttime urination. The goal here is not to accept suffering, it's to reduce friction. Sometimes that means a pillow between the knees, a different mattress topper, a short routine of gentle stretching earlier in the evening, elevating the head of the bed slightly if reflux is a pattern. Talking with your clinician about whether your medication timing could be contributing. And right about here, midway through the video, I want to invite you into something. If you're the kind of person who wants to understand what your body is saying, and you want steady, calm guidance as you age, consider joining us here. Not as a subscriber number, but as a small community of people protecting their future with knowledge and kindness. Because the older we get, the more we deserve health information that doesn't talk down to us. Now we've covered hormones, clocks, bladders, and discomfort. But there's another cause of 3 a.m. wake-ups that many older adults live with for years, without realizing it has a name, and without realizing it's treatable. Obstructive sleep apnea. Sleep apnea can cause repeated breathing disruptions at night, leading to frequent awakenings, fragmented sleep, dry mouth, morning headaches, and daytime fatigue, even if you don't remember waking fully. Meet Gerald, 70. Gerald isn't sure why he keeps waking around 3 a.m., but he notices something. When he wakes, his heart sometimes feels like it's working harder. His mouth is dry. And during the day, he's more forgetful than he used to be. Little senior moments that leave him uneasy. Here's the mechanism, in gentle terms. When the airway narrows or collapses during sleep, oxygen dips and carbon dioxide rises. The brain responds with a micro-arousal, just enough to tighten the airway muscles and restore breathing. You might not sit up, you might not remember it, but your nervous system experiences it as a stress event, and repeated stress events at night can lead to that familiar pattern, waking in the early morning hours feeling wired, thirsty, or unsettled. Sleep apnea is more common with age, and it's not only about body weight. Anatomy, muscle tone, nasal congestion, alcohol, and sleeping position can all play roles. If you snore loudly, gasp, or choke in sleep, wake with morning headaches, feel unusually sleepy during the day, or wake frequently to urinate, this is worth discussing with your clinician. A sleep study can bring enormous clarity, and treatment, when appropriate, doesn't just improve sleep. It can improve mood, energy, blood pressure control, and cognitive sharpness for many people. Let me pause here and ask you something softly, because this is where many people quietly recognize themselves. When you wake at 3 a.m., do you feel calm and simply awake? Or do you feel a little jolt in your body, like your system is on alert? If this point surprised you, I'd love to hear what you've noticed in your own nights. Now we arrive at the final layer, and it's the one that often feels the most personal. Because sometimes 3 a.m. isn't your bladder or your hips or your hormones. Sometimes 3 a.m. is your nervous system. Stress biology can shift sleep, and one key player is cortisol, often called the body's activation hormone. Cortisol naturally rises around waking, but if the stress system is dysregulated, that rise may feel too early or too sharp, contributing to early morning awakening. Think about Maria, 73. Maria looks calm on the outside. She's handled life. She's raised children, managed crises, survived loss. But lately, she wakes at 3 a.m. and her mind clicks on like a lamp. Not always anxious thoughts, sometimes just evaluating thoughts. Did I say the wrong thing to my daughter? What if my blood pressure gets worse? How long can I stay independent? Why do I miss people who are gone so much at night? Here's what's important to understand. The quiet of the early morning removes distractions, and the aging brain, with all its wisdom, also becomes more vulnerable to rumination, repetitive thought loops, especially if there's grief, loneliness, uncertainty, or a sense of time passing faster than it used to. And once you're awake, the mind tries to solve life at 3 a.m., a time when problems feel heavier and solutions feel farther away. This is also where sleep skills matter. Cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia, CBTI, is one of the most evidence-supported approaches for insomnia, including in older adults, and it focuses on retraining behaviors and thoughts that keep insomnia going. Now, I'm not going to overwhelm you with a program in a single video, but I will give you one deeply practical, wise friend guideline for 3 a.m. Stop trying to win a fight with your brain in bed. If you're awake and tense for more than about 15 or 20 minutes, consider getting up gently, keeping lights very dim and warm, and doing something boring and soothing, like reading a familiar book, folding a towel, or listening to a calm voice. Then return to bed when sleepiness returns, because the bed should stay associated with safety and sleep, not struggle, clock watching, and self-judgment. And there's another tender truth here. Sometimes 3 a.m. wake-ups are your heart asking for care, not dramatic care, just small human care. A journal beside the bed where you can place the thought somewhere other than inside your chest. A short daytime walk in sunlight to support circadian rhythm. A conversation you've been avoiding that your nervous system keeps scheduling for 3 a.m. A little more connection during the day so the night doesn't feel like an emotional desert. You are not weak for waking up, you are alive, and your system is communicating. Now let's bring the big picture together, because I don't want you to leave with a list of reasons. I want you to leave with peace and a plan. If you're waking up at 3 a.m. after 60, it often means one of two things is true. Either your sleep is becoming lighter and more timing sensitive because of melatonin changes and circadian shift, and your environment or habits are nudging you awake, or something is interrupting your sleep from underneath, like nocturia, discomfort, reflux, medications, breathing disruptions, or a stress response your nervous system learned over decades. And sometimes, more than one is happening at the same time. So here's what I want you to do with this information. Gently, notice your pattern without blaming yourself. Ask, what usually wakes me? My body, my bladder, my breath, or my mind? And then choose one small experiment for 7 nights. One small change. Darker room. Earlier caffeine cutoff. A different pillow arrangement. A conversation with your clinician about nocturia or apnea signs. A 3 a.m. plan that helps you step out of the struggle instead of wrestling in the dark. Because the goal at this stage of life is not perfection. The goal is steadiness. The goal is waking up and thinking, my body isn't my enemy, it's my companion, and we're learning each other again. You've lived long enough to know this. Many things get better when we stop meeting them with fear. So tonight, if you wake at 3 a.m., take one slow breath and remember, this moment is not proof you're failing. It may simply be your body asking for a slightly different kind of care now, and you can give it that. You're not alone in this, and you're not too old to sleep well again. You're wiser now, and wisdom, when applied kindly, changes everything.